I shot this video last year in Ecuador, but I didn't have good lighting, I didn't have space, I didn't have my training gear, and the video wound up with audio drift where by the end of it the video and audio were completely out of sync. So I'm reshooting it now with better equipment, better situation. I want to talk about the slapping in the Filipino martial arts, and other arts use it, but the Filipino arts, there's a lot of it. As we're moving around, there's a lot of slapping going on, whether it's our chest, our arm, our legs. So I want to discuss some of the reasons that we do that in training. So I have 7 reasons we do that. There may be more. These are the ones that I most frequently see, use, discuss, etc. in my own training and teaching. The first is as a counterbalance. So if I have a weapon like my stick, and this is even truer of heavy weapons, if I am firing an angle 1 with this over and over again, right, it doesn't take long before my shoulder starts complaining, because all of the energy of this motion is focused right here. By using my other hand in a counterbalancing motion, I don't necessarily have to slap, but I can. But that counterbalancing motion spreads that energy across my entire shoulder girdle. And I can do this for a long time without feeling a whole lot of stress in any one place. But if I just do this, it's a lot of stress right there in that shoulder. And it's true if I'm doing backhands. It doesn't matter what angle I'm swinging. If I am doing just swings like this is also poor body mechanics, so I'll get there in a minute. But there's all the stress is here on my shoulder. By adding my other hand in, now I'm spreading that across this entire expanse, so this shoulder doesn't take all the abuse, and I'm able to go longer in training. I'm able to go longer in a sparring match or whatever. Tangential to that is the body mechanics. If I just swing like this, there's no body mechanics. That's all my shoulder and my arm. So by moving here, right, then I'm able to create more power. The second reason primarily has to do with forehand strikes. Using the Cacoy dos Paros angle systems, it doesn't matter if I'm talking about an angle 3, an angle 7, an angle 9, right? Doesn't matter. Those are forehand strikes, right? By the same token, an angle 11 is a forehand thrust, right? So in those strikes, I'll illustrate with the 3. A lot of systems would call this an angle 1. Whatever term you want to use is fine. This angle here, okay? So if I just before impact I slap, this causes a slingshot effect in the tip of my stick. That slingshot effect adds a lot of acceleration just before impact, and increased acceleration means increased power. So just before point of impact I slap and get a slingshot, whipping effect. So here, okay? So that's one reason. That's kind of the big reason, aside from the counterbalance. Tangential to that is that from backhand strikes, part of the reason we use this structure when we come to a closed chamber. The chambers are a lot like stances. We don't spend a lot of time in chamber, right? They are points we pass through as we're doing other things, right? But when you're in a closed chamber and you go to fire a shot, whether it's a 2, a 4, right? Doesn't matter what shot it is. But backhand shot, you can start that with this hand. So instead of just swinging my arm, I push here. And that gives me a little bit of an increase to the acceleration at the beginning of my stroke. Again, increased acceleration equals increased power. So that's the second reason, with an addendum, right? Your slingshot and your initial. So that's 2 and 3 reasons, right? 1 is your counterbalance, 2 is your slingshot, 3 is your acceleration off the line. I realize that the counterbalance and the push-off aren't really slaps, but they are still in the same realm of moving this hand. In a moment we'll get to another one that's more related to that than the slapping itself. An empty hand reason, and I got this terminology from a friend of mine who does American Kenpo karate, but it's just as true in the Filipino arts or other arts that use slapping. In the American Kenpo terminology, as he explained it to me, they call it A-B striking. So this is your A strike, then your B is your follow-up. So by slapping here, they're able to steal some of this energy from the A strike, and lead that into the B strike. So 1, 2, that B strike has more power than it would if I just fired it here, because of the rebound energy that it gets from the A strike. And it doesn't necessarily have to slap the arm. It might slap the chest, right? So I might fire here, and this slap here leads to that rebound there. There are a lot of ways this can express, but the A motion feeds the B motion to carry on the power. If I go 1, 2, both are starting from 0. But if I go 1, 2, right, then I'm able to feed off that first shot into the second. Another empty hand reason is, as I fire this straight line shot, if I'm firing all my power and I miss, and I'm going to full extension, I might hyperextend my own elbow. People commonly overcome that by reducing their speed as they approach their target. They're usually not taught that, because when you look at it objectively, it doesn't make sense. But people do it reflexively as a learned behavior, especially after they've hyperextended their elbow, because that hurts. So their body naturally goes, we don't want that to happen again. And they end up, as they approach the target, they end up slowing down. So they go and slow down just a little bit, so that if they miss, they either don't hyperextend or it's not as bad. In the Filipino arts, we prevent that slowdown, because that slowdown, if you increase acceleration, you increase power. When you decrease acceleration, you decrease power. So the Filipino arts, in order to prevent that decreased power, uses the other hand as my margin of safety, to stop my momentum. So I fire, and this hand, just past my point of impact, it stops my acceleration. Once that becomes ingrained, my body realizes, oh, if this hand's in place, I can't hyperextend this. So I can fire full power without ever slowing that acceleration, and not worry about hyperextending even if I miss. So that's another reason in the Filipino arts we do the slap. Well, another reason for that, and this one is a bit odd from the standard external perspective. I got this from a Tai Chi instructor. And when you play with it, you realize that there's something there. So if you can feel it with a partner. So, and I'll use this bag since I don't have a partner handy right now. If if I punch in and press, if I end up with a push, obviously there's some power there. I'm moving the bag, right? But it's a push. When we're looking for power to have rapid effects in a fight, we don't want to push, right? Unless they fall down and hurt themselves, it's not likely going to be anything to slow them down or even stop them outside of pushing them away and they have to cover that distance. I want them structurally compromised if I can, so that they can't chase me. They can't come at me as quickly in the near future. So the power I want to generate is not a push power. It's an impact power, right? So, and that has to do with the return, with the withdrawal. Even in Western boxing, there's a saying that you want your strike to come back twice as fast as it goes out. Okay? Part of the reason for that is the longer it's out there, the more vulnerable it is to be caught, to be locked, to be struck, to be cut if there's a blade involved, whatever. But also, when I hit and retract, it causes a different type of energy to them. But for impact energy, I want to retract. So on the bag, it looks very different. The push looks like this. It moves, but there's a little buckle here before it moves. The impact should be almost all buckle, right? There's very little movement. If I move him, then all that energy is getting dispersed through that movement. What I want is a buckling of this, which keeps that energy right there. So I want minimal motion of the entire thing and a lot of energy transferal right in the point of impact. This slapping hand then serves as a acceleration on the retraction, right? As opposed to the just stopping it. The next reason is we want to keep, in the Filipino arts we call our offhand our live hand. And commonly, a common thing you see when you start working with people, when you start teaching, you may notice it in yourself when you start training, though most people don't, is a tendency to drop their hands. Right? So they'll be, let's say they're working focus mitts, right, or just boxing drills or striking drills, and they'll go jab, cross, and they've dropped this completely out of the action, right? It's a really common situation, really common problem. And a hand that's down here is no longer in the action. There are some exceptions to this. For instance, if I am drawing a weapon, that's a valid reason to drop that hand. But it should be an intentional motion, not a habit. Right? So, in general, if a hand is not in this space right here, then it's out of the action. Right? And when I say hand in this, what I'm really referring to is weapon. It might be a blade in this hand that I've dropped out of the action. It might be a firearm, right? Or a stick. It doesn't matter. If my weapon is not in this general area, right, then it's out of the action. If I'm talking about lower body weapons, then that's a different area, but the same principle applies. So in the Filipino arts, to get people over that tendency, minimize it, etc., since we start with weapons training, as people are swinging this tends to just hang out. Right? So we tell people just pin it here to your chest, right, and keep it there as you're moving. Over time, it starts moving on its own volition, right? But that slapping, that using your own body as a reference, helps you keep it live. So over time, as it starts moving in here, and you're touching your torso and your arms, along with all the other reasons like power generation or AB striking, etc., it keeps your live hand live. It keeps it in the action if it's constantly up here finding these reference points as you're moving, right? So I've mostly been talking about Filipino arts, but the body slaps are not uncommon throughout Southeast Asian arts, and to varying other degrees in other arts. So as an example, in Pencak Silat, we've got jurus that have a lot of motions like this, where I'm slapping my forearm, or I'm slapping my chest. We've got we've got motions where we're slapping our knee, right? And some of the Silat jurus that I have, we slap our foot, right? Or we slap our hand with our foot, right? That's part of the juru. And these things, especially the lower body tools, they seem a little strange, but sometimes they are simulation of doing something to them. So for instance, when I do this, I might be trapping their arm between my hand and forearm. I might be trapping their head. Right? So this motion might simulate a hit. It might also simulate a choke if this is the back of their head and their throat is between these two appendages, these two tools, right? So I might be doing a choke here, right? I might have hold of their collar and I'm choking, but it's still this motion, okay? I might have their head and be sandwiching it between my knee and hands. I might have their arm and be pulling them towards me off balance as I fire that knee into their midsection, okay? So that's the final thing that this slapping can be used for, is to simulate that I have some part of them, some part of their body between my hand and the tool that I'm using, right?